late. Isn't it great to be back finally and having a meeting in person?
Yeah.
Well, we were doing
I
that.
don't know about the rest of you, but it's been a busy summer for me. I got a lot of stuff done. And that's pretty much what I've heard on the way in here, is just how often people have been running here and there and getting stuff done and traveling and selling homes and moving out. So, I guess I'll start the meeting in the usual way where we just introduce. Is that necessary? I look around, I don't see any
No strangers.
no strangers here, so we all pretty much know each other. Do you want to do the usual? Sure. Sue says do it, so I'm that's the problem, we don't know what
But they can't see us anyway.
there's some IP address missing in Eric's. So whatever, he can record the meeting, but he can't put it live. That's the bottom line, I guess. All right, well, I'm Bart Checker, K3, and I live in Placida with my wife, KB3UDU, Pamela. And I guess that's all I normally do. I'm going to start over here with Betty.
Okay, Betty, KB0YDH from
Ken, KB0HP.
Pat Ron from Rifle.
KD0WQC, Dave from Rifle.
And 6S, you're running Trish from Glenwood.
Jerry, and 6HBQ from Glenwood.
Bob, K9 Mike Whiskey Mike from Glenwood.
Sue and 0DBY from Glenwood.
I'm Bob, K0ALN from Aspen.
Pam, KB3UDU.
Gary, AC0UZ.
And 0THY, Brian from Rifle.
Richard from Glenwood.
Ray, W2UDY, Carbon.
K5WRE, Robert from Clark. KT02, Graham from Glenwood.
Kevin, KD09.
And Eric.
So I better get out of here because I'm not supposed to be talking while I'm eating. I just finished my time. We all figured that
Did your
out.
mother tell you that? Is that good?
You know, it's a little closer to home. I'm thinking, are there any announcements that anyone wants to make before the presentation?
I guess I can say we enjoyed this club for 21 years. No, not that long. Since I guess it was 2015. when we joined,
10 years. Even 10.
So it's been 10.
We missed.
Looks like it's.
Yeah, you guys were essential, I think, early on. I remember the Elk Creek chase or whatever it was.
Oh,
that incident. I think fondly every
I
time.
guess we did it the last time it was done, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, after they finished with you guys, it was done. Yeah. Okay, so Graham is our featured speaker today. I'm just going to let him take over. You all ready?
I guess we just went through. So I'm looking at the video.
Try turning it off and on again.
Yeah. Better than on and off again.
Yeah. Because the last time we had this.
Remote?
you want me to go get the librarian?
AV guy.
So, just be able to talk to him a little bit.
Alexa, turn on a TV.
Yeah.
Alexa, plug in the TV.
Yeah, right. You don't just go. It's not hooked up to the clapper. Yeah, it's not hooked onto the clapper. Sorry, I'm giving away my age here, I guess.
That would be good. Andy, it's what happens when you don't have a meeting for 3 months.
Yeah. Maybe retrain.
Change something.
So where are you gonna get it?
Park East.
All right.
I'm out by the airport. We've been there.
Certainly have enough equipment.
Yeah.
Been there 13 years.
My 70, coming in weight.
Oh, the camper. We've been getting out of it. We haven't been in a while. We haven't gone anywhere in a while.
Because you want to take it down and just.
We usually go to, well, I've been going to Uray. We usually go to Rabbit Valley.
Okay, my mic's on. Does anyone recognize where this is?
Is that Chapman Lake?
No. Good guess. Anybody? No. It's from up on the bluffs at Sweetwater. So it's not yet a state park. I'm really curious when or if it becomes a state park. If they'll add it to Parks on the Air, but that's my first life.
That's Sweetwater?
Yeah. It's from up on the hill. The little hiking trail comes in down here. But there's a fight going on about whether or not it's going to be a state park. Owned by the Forest Service now, but they're trying to let the state run a state park there. So I thought that would be fun opening slides. Thank you for letting me present today. I have had a lot of fun with Parks on the Air, and I know a number of you have heard me talking about it throughout the year, but it's been a good branch of ham radio for me this past year, so I thought I'd throw together a little presentation to talk to you a little bit about it. I promise it will be shorter than the last time I presented. That went a little long, and I apologize. This is only 20 slides, so we should get through it pretty quick. Some of you got to meet my 4 tiny humans at the camp out up at Chapman, but they're also my biggest impediment to playing ham radio. It takes a lot of time and attention, and if I'm not assisting, it all falls on my wife, and that does not lead for a healthy, happy marriage. So I've been trying to find ways to play ham radio while I can also take care of these. They're incredible tiny human beings. I love them all. And we've had a ton of fun fishing and whatnot this summer, and I've also got to play a little bit of radio. So, and my oldest in the blue shirt there, second from the right, made a few FT8 contacts at field day this year. He loved that. So he's a ham in the making. I'm not sure about the rest of them.
They all look like hams to me. They're all hammering up pretty good.
Right there, he's bald because he cut his hair with scissors, and so I had to shave it. He just likes to fish. He doesn't care about the radio. Ace on the end, or Ben, his nickname is Ace. He's always off doing something. He can't sit still. And Nora's, I don't know. We'll see what happens with her. She's pretty princess in all factors. So some of my solutions are, I don't have time to sit in the shack. I would love to work a contest, but I can't sit in my shack all weekend and neglect parenting my 4 kids. So I talked to my wife at Christmas last year and said, I'd like to explore a mobile setup or something that would let me play radio when I'm out driving, or I can go places, etc. So on the right there is my Subaru. It has a Yaesu 891 and a FTM 400 FM rig in it. So that's a 5/8 wave antenna on the left, and ATOS 120 screwdriver on the right. I had to do some bonding in the car, put some copper braid straps that I screwed in with lock washers between the hatch and the body and the hood, and I think I did a couple of the doors at least to get as much grounding as possible. But that thing works pretty good for HF. And then on the left here, which I think I got that pole from Don Moore, I've set up a couple times when we go out camping. I got that camper beginning of the summer, and we've gotten out, I think, 7 times in it this summer, so doing pretty good. But getting to set up and play a little radio when we go out camping in a park. So I started exploring when we're out places, what kind of radio can I play? And I kept, as I'm driving down the highway, I kept hearing people calling CQ POTA, CQ Parks on the Air, and I would, in the early part of the year, I hesitated to come back to them because I was like, man, I don't want to make a contact with this person and then not submit a log and then screw up their log. That doesn't seem fair. So I started looking into it and realized that, oh, they're the only ones, the person in the park is the only one that submits the log. So it doesn't matter if I'm driving and I come back to them. They still get points for that contact. So I thought maybe I should look into this. So Parks on the Air is relatively new. It's about 2018 when people organized to put this together. There was a 2017 event where the ARL did National Parks on the Air, and people enjoyed that enough they kind of organized and tried to put together a longer term program than just the sort of one summer ARL program. And I've also, all the pictures in the presentation are various local or semi-local parks, and I've included the park number and park name, so you can look for those. But you'll hear people on the radio calling out, in their CQ, they'll often include this as to what park they're at. Some of why Parks on the Air is pretty fun. Everybody kind of likes points and leaderboards, and I like that contesting stuff, just don't have the time to dedicate to it. So it's not technically a contest. You can use the work bands, but it's also kind of fun to see how you stack up and take that top spot at a local park. There are almost always, I've never seen the spotting page empty, I don't think. Even like middle of the night, someone's on 40 meters FT8 in the park somewhere. There's some guy, K7CAR, who all he does is set up in his RV and run FT8 in various parks across the western US. So he's like always on. But I've never seen the spotting page empty, so there's almost always someone in a park doing Parks on the Air. And I've never heard, there's always people looking for people out in parks. There's always people hunting. It gets you out and practicing setting up antennas, etc. I kind of cheat with the car, having it all set up, but it fits with the time I get to operate. So if I go to a meeting in Rifle, I can swing past Harvey Gap on the way back and not take too much of the time and still make it to my kids' after school pickup. You get to get out and see your parks. And then a couple of the things that changed this year, if you renewed your license plates in Colorado this year, you get a state parks pass as part of your registration for like $27 or $29, which is a pretty big savings. It's like $80 to buy a parks pass without that. So that's pretty cool, get into the parks. And I've had a number of fun conversations with people like, what the heck are you doing out here? Everyone else is fishing, why are you here with antennas? So it's a fun chance to talk about ham radio. Actually, this one spurred a lot of conversations. I had probably 4 people come up and ask me if I was fishing for bats or something. And you inevitably tell them, no, it's actually ham radio, and the response is always, people still do that? So you get to have a fun conversation. I tried to get one guy on the air, he wasn't interested. It's pretty quick. If you're not a rag chewer, you don't have to sit around and make a bunch of comments with people. You can get a couple QSOs and get out of there. And for those of us who either don't have the time or physical ability, you don't have to get on top of a mountain to participate in Parks on the Air, unlike Summits on the Air. So here's a pretty simple QSO. Hardscrabble East Eagle is just south of Gypsum, the park that's at the picture there. So you would have someone calling CQ at Park 9598, which is Hardscrabble East Eagle State Wildlife Area. and maybe Pete in Florida comes back. We exchange signal reports and states, neither of which are actually mandatory for the log. There's usually a little commentary to it. It's not, some people run it really fast and just signal reports and get out of there. And I'm sure Ken can tell you it's a little different on CW. I don't do a whole lot of CW. At least I haven't activated yet. But I usually run sideband. So little simple QSO there and a beautiful view looking down towards Gypsum. The other side of Gypsum is the Gypsum Pond State Wildlife Area. You can hit one and then cruise around and hit the other pretty quick for 2 parks in a row. An activation of a park, when you get out there to get credit for activating a park, it takes 10 QSOs. And you want to do it in a single UTC day, because if you submit a log that runs over the UTC, one UTC day to the next, it will split it into 2, which would be a real bummer for you to not get credit for activating on one day, because you only got 4 and then the other 6 happened the following UTC day. Some people will run it just like a contest. You almost never get their call sign or their park number when you're trying to come back to their CQ, which is kind of obnoxious. So I always try and include the park number and my call sign when I'm calling CQ. There's a real variation in how people out in parks activating treat it. I've had some that just want to chat and all they need is 10 contacts. So if they can make that over the course of an afternoon, it's pretty low key. And I've had some people who, if you don't come back fast enough, they're just moving on to the next person. They just want as many contacts as possible. So generally when you're hunting, when you're trying to contact someone who's out in a park, we give signal report and state or part of the state. Some people treat it like a contest, although the rules say it's not. Unlike SOTA and some of the others, it's a really, really simple rule set. Only the guy who's in the park submits the log. The rules are basically follow the park rules. You have some minimum requirements for a log, but it's meant to be easily accessible, pretty fun, not a lot of restrictions. And I'm sure there are people that cheat at that, but for most of us, it's just kind of fun. So, and you can use the work bands. I've done a couple, did 17 meters and 15 meters and some off bands, although most people hang out on 20. This breaks my rules of how many words I should put on a PowerPoint slide, so I apologize. It's probably too small. But the rules are pretty simple, and they're supposed to be self-policing. There's no POTA, Parks on the Air board, to submit a cheater report to that's going to kick them out of the program or something. It's supposed to be self-policing. Some parks, I've never encountered it in Colorado, but some places they get upset at you if you throw wire up in trees. So basically they tell you if the ranger comes around and says, hey, you can't be doing this, you got to listen to what the park ranger says. Be courteous, submit your log. They want you to submit your log even if you don't make your 10 contacts, because the people that made contact with you in the park then don't get credit if you don't submit your log. Just some basic requirements over there for what you need to keep in your log: the call sign, the operator, the person you contacted, date, time, band mode, etc. And we'll cover some of that in a couple slides. Get out and have fun and try not to be a jerk is pretty much the extent of it. They want you to be in the boundaries of the park. So sometimes that's tricky, finding a parking lot or a parking space, and there might be a great open area just across the road, but you gotta be in the parks for the spirit of go out and get in your park and activate the park. There's some fun parts to it, particularly when someone else in another park contacts you. You both get credit because you're both going to be submitting logs. They're pretty nebulous. As long as you both log those contacts within 15 minutes of each other, the time in your log matches within 15 minutes, they'll count it. And you got to exchange park numbers, which is sometimes kind of tricky because the other guy in the park will be running QRP or something, and he's really hard to hear. But if you call, you hear a guy in a park and you call your call sign and park to park, man, those guys will stop dead and try and pick out that park to park. That's pretty fun. I've had a lot of multiple operators. They'll go out with 2 or 3 or 4. I think the most I ever had was like 6 people. They just handed the mic down the line. Stand by for second operator, stand by for third operator. It's kind of tough when you have limited time. Like when I'm driving down the road and I hear someone on calling CQ POTA and I come back to them and they say stand by for second operator, stand by for third operator, and I'm like trying to get in my driveway. But it's oftentimes like kids or people with lower class licenses, or maybe a club has gone out there. So I try and like stick it out as much as possible. And you get points for every person you talk to, so that's kind of fun. You can also, unlike Summits on the Air and some of the other programs, you can have 2 for, like you get credit for 2 parks at once. So I stopped at Clear Creek Reservoir, which is also in the San Isabel National Forest. So you can see up there at the top, it has 2 park numbers. I did that on a drive back from Leadville and got credit for activating 2 parks by only making, I think, 11 or 12 contacts. And then here's a guy I worked on 40 meter FT8 just a couple weeks ago, who was in Maryland and was apparently in somewhere in Maryland where 4 park references overlap. So I made 1 QSO with him, but get credit for contacting 4 different parks. So some of the other parks or Summits on the Air and other programs, there's no overlap, worldwide flora and fauna, et cetera. But in Parks on the Air, people will go for multiples pretty often. So I've looked at the map to find out where the national forests overlap some of these other campgrounds and stuff. This is the part of the presentation where, unlike a school teacher, you are welcome to take out your phones and go to that website. This is the tracking for all of Parks on the Air. I like the way they did it. They didn't make an app that only goes on your iPhone or only on Android. It is just a website. And they have a pretty remarkable team of people who do the programming, et cetera, for Parks on the Air. And they're very responsive to upgrade requests. If you have a problem with your log, you can reach out to them and they'll fix stuff. They're all volunteers. I don't think they get paid very much. So it's very impressive. If anyone wants, there's a way on an iPhone you can go to the website and set it to look like a little an app on your phone. So you click it on the home screen and it goes right to the app. But if anyone wants to open that up, you can look at all the different stuff as we go along. So this is State Forest State Park, which I have not activated yet, but that was a really pretty picture I found on Google. So for the full screen picture slide there. So the POTA website has sort of everything you need. You can access it from a desktop or from your phone for all the spots, awards, log submissions, everything sort of contained in one spot. Over here we have an example of the map. So you can see Glenwood Springs and Rifle and Gypsum, and all these yellow dots are different park entities you can activate. Some of them will put the dot in one place, but like the White River National Forest is not that dot, right? It's enormous. So anywhere within White River National Forest counts, even though on that map it's just a dot. So like if you click on that dot, so I've clicked on Rifle Gap State Park, it'll pull up, everyone who's activated the park, the number of times they've activated, the number of total QSOs they've made, and the number of times people hunting have made contact with that park. So it's always kind of fun to see your name at the top of the list somewhere. So the spotting page is probably the most significant part. And I have when I click on the POTA thing on my phone, it pops up to the spotting page. When people hear you out in a park, they'll put you on the spotting page. If you run CW and you get picked up by the reverse beacon network or on FT8 or something, it will automatically put you in the spotting page, and people look at the spotting page. I have had numerous instances where I've been out in a park with no cell service, call in CQ for 20 minutes, make 1 contact, call CQ for another 5 or 10 minutes, make another contact, and man, that guy must have put me on the spotting page because all of a sudden the pileup just blows up. And there's 12 people calling at once. So people really do look at the spotting page. It has some great features. You can sort by band, mode, all these things, and you can sort it by frequency. So usually like I'll hop in my car, my antenna is tuned up to 20 meters, I'll put it on sideband, and sort by frequency, and then it just gives me a list all the way down the band of anywhere there's someone activating, and I just scroll till I can hear someone. But here we have a couple of foreign entities. All the US park numbers start with K. All the Canadian park numbers start with VE something. I'm not actually sure where this one is, but some foreign entities. And Vega Lake State Park down here, we went camping there once this summer and managed to squeak out an activation there. There is no qualms about self-spotting. If you are in a park somewhere and you have cell service, you can put yourself on the spotting network. No one cares. There's no judgment about it. It's not seen as bad, not quite like some contests, you can't do that. But Harvey Gap there on the right, there's an aerial picture of Harvey Gap, doesn't have cell service. So sometimes I go up there and you have to call CQ for a while, or you stop before you get into the canyon driving up to the park and put yourself on the spotting page. So here I've done that, put myself on 20 meters in the sideband portion of the band. You can actually put like SSB or CW in the comments and it will tag your spot as the mode you're running. So I usually if I'm short on time, I don't really want to call CQ, I'll spot myself, drive up to the parking area and get on the air. So you can spot yourself. Some people will spot you and you can ask to be spotted, but there's a number of people that will be scrolling the dial and hear someone calling CQ and come back to you. And if you ask them, hey, can you spot me? They'll go, spot you where? What are you talking about? I heard you calling CQ, but I don't know what you're talking about. So not everyone knows, not everyone actually participates in POTA, but you can spot yourself, you can spot other people, and there's some ties into automatic spotting for CW and data modes. If you like certificates and statistics of how you do, Parks on the Air is great for that. They have all kinds of goofy certificates. So I screenshot a couple things from my profile. So up here we have a couple for the numbers of park entities I've hunted. This one you get for making a number of park-to-park contacts. They have a couple of weekends a year they call the Support Your Parks weekends. And if you get out on those weekends and do an activation or make contact with someone in a park, you get a certificate. Or if you do some Parks on the Air near New Year's or make contact with some foreign entities, or at a certain period of the evening for late shift. The Rover one was fun. That's the lowest level of the Rover, but that's 5 parks in one UTC day. So I did 2 in Eagle, and then I went to Junction and did 3 more the next morning. And had lunch with Ken Mayer and Frank down in Mac. That was fun. And then it tracks, the number of parks you've activated or hunted and et cetera. So if you're close, when that fills up, you get another certificate. So those are kind of fun. But it has a full page of statistics. Interestingly, it tracks your statistics even if you're not enrolled in the POTA program, if you haven't signed up. So those of you who haven't signed up, if you go sign up on the POTA.app website, you will probably already have some points in there and maybe some certificates if you've ever made contact with some parks. It keeps track of those even if you're not registered, so you can sign up and be pleasantly surprised at some new certificates you can print out and hang on your wall. And a beautiful picture of Grand Mesa National Forest there on the right. There's a number of different ways you can log. Some people do paper, and they have a thing you can enter your paper logs. There's an app called Hammers, H-A-M-R-S, for, I don't know if they have an Android app. I know they do for iPhone. And they have a really great Parks on the Air template that has, spaces for if you make a park-to-park, you put in their park number, you put in your park number, and you can just email the log to yourself and on your desktop computer drag it over and dump it into the website and it will process the whole thing. So I tend to use that when I'm out because it's quick. I don't have to worry about retyping things later. It saves, frequency and power and mode and everything. So really all you need to do is their call sign, signal reports, and save and move on to the next one. That's pretty handy. I haven't been to Dominguez Escalante National Conservation Area, but that has its own entity there on the right. The POTA.app also has log You drag your logs in there, and all you got to do is like you click, and you can browse your computer to where you've saved the file, or you just drag it right in there and click submit, and it sucks it right up and processes it and spits out your points. So they make it about as easy as possible, as long as you have it in the ADIF format. Their website is pretty slick and pretty user-friendly. And if there's ever problems, they're very responsive to why didn't this log actually get processed or something. I've only emailed them once, but they have a Discord server and some other ways to get a hold of them, and they're usually really responsive to people. Parks on the Air is not the only on-the-air program. I'm sure you've all heard of Summits on the Air, and Mr. Cutter, whose gear is over here, was a big participant in Summits on the Air. They have a more restrictive set of rules than Parks on the Air, and you got to climb a mountain to play SOTA. So I think we're going to get a presentation in November that should cover SOTA. I don't have time to climb mountains, nor am I really in shape to climb mountains at the moment, but that's my excuse for not playing more Summits on the Air. There's another interesting Volunteers on the Air program that the ARL is running this year, and really all you have to do is submit your logs to Logbook of the World, and they give you points. But any ARL member, you get 1 point. If you contact someone who's a VE, you get 5 points. Or if you work Rick Roderick, the ARL president, K5UR, you get 300 points. And all you do is submit your log. So it's kind of fun to see. Again, I like to see the points and statistics and where you rack up. So this was a number of months ago, and this was a couple weeks ago. Move up in the rankings a little bit. Fun to see how many hams are participating out of, 750,000 in the country. And then this picture, lovely picture that's right in Clark's backyard, the Beaver Lake State Wildlife Area in Marble. I haven't been to that one yet, but we'll get there. A few more on-the-air programs. Islands on the Air, I've heard a few times. I haven't worked that one intentionally, but you can get certificates for working island on the air references. Worldwide Flora and Fauna, I think, was where Parks on the Air sort of took their inspiration. They're similar to Parks on the Air. They've been running since 2008. You can only activate one park at a time. They're worldwide. They're pretty popular in New Zealand, Australia, and some parts of Europe. And you need 44 QSOs in the same UTC day to activate, which sometimes can be a slog. 10 is a pretty easy mark to make 10 QSOs out there. I have failed a few, but 44 seems like a higher bar. They have a website, www.ff.co, if you wanted to check that out, and they do use different park numbers. I think if you're working Worldwide Flora and Fauna, you can also submit your log for Parks on the Air. Most of them cross over, but and then lovely Walmart Parking Lots on the Air. Doesn't run year-round, but they do have a once a year on July 2nd, first full weekend of July, and instead of activators and hunters like SOTA, they have shoppers and associates. I'm not the only member of the club that has participated in Parks on the Air, so here's a couple pictures. There's Fred and Ken and Betty at the camp out up at Chapman with Ken's beautiful little IC705 QRP CW rig, and he had a cool vertical antenna that we got to check out. So he had an activation going, I think, of White River National Forest up at Chapman. And then two pictures on the right, that's Barrett Allen, KF0 JVO, who came out with me once. He's just a tech license, but we went to Harvey Gap. And Shane Smith there on the right does a lot of QRP activating. And so he's running a little, QCX Mini kit he built, and a end-fed wire. You can see the pole sticking up there in the back. But he's done a number of CW activations, and that one was at Harvey Gap. So there's a few different people. And that's the end of what I have to talk to you about, but I'm happy to take questions or discuss further. And Highline Lake State Park, that was the last, when I did the Rover, that was the last one I stopped at. Hi, Al.
Hi, sorry, I'm just kidding, so you may cover this, but Tony, for instance, is pretty active in that.
Yeah.
And the other day, he gone him to that BLM land, but he didn't know if it was all right to just activate a piece of land that isn't necessarily named anything. You understand the question?
I do. It generally has to be a reference recognized by Parks on the Air. They don't do generally BLM lands, they do national forests. And they,
Working on National Forest site, would you just name it for the closest place, or do they have names set up?
you have to be within the boundaries of the entity you're activating. So if he's on BLM but not in the national forest, that doesn't count. He can make contacts from there, but you don't get credit towards an entity. I don't know if I can make, let's see. Oh, there's my dog. Oh, it's not going to show you my browser. I was going to pull up the web page.
And Graham, what's the number of Parks on the Air guys?
Yeah.
But I've never signed up on his site. Do they still get credit for that?
And in fact, you worked me when I was out at, I think it was Rifle Gap one time. Yes, you still get credit. When you sign up, it will populate with the points you already have.
Well, I don't mean by points for me, but I mean the person that I work that's out of Parks.
Yes.
Do they still get credit even though I'm not registered as a photographer?
That was my worry when I started working those guys who were out in the parks, is they're not going to get points for me because I'm not submitting a log. But only the guy who's in the park submits the log. So he gets credit. They just assume you're not spoofing your log and adding a bunch of contacts you didn't actually make. So the only real verification is those park to park, because both guys in both parks will have submitted. So as long as those are within 15 minutes of each other in the log, you get credit for those. But you get credit for, you as the activator in the park get credit for everyone you make contact with and put in your log. So there is some room for cheating if someone were inclined to do that, but
You're only cheating yourself.
you're only cheating yourself, it's not worth it. And I've never encountered, I guess I've never looked at like the top leaderboards or something to see if people might be spoofing them, but most people seem pretty honest. It's been a good program for me. Like I said, I can go to a meeting in Rifle and stop at Harvey Gap or Rifle Gap on the way back and slam out 20 contacts and call it a park activation and cruise on home. And I haven't cut out too much of my day or time away from my kids to play radio. I work a lot from my car. I'll turn on my rig at home in the evening and work some people on 40 meters. And I always kind of spin the dial and listen for the Parks on the Air people first, or look at the spotting page. But just because it's fun to see those points stack up. In my car, I have an 891 for HF, and then at home I have a 991. Yeah.
I see. But are you using that antenna? The self-tuning?
Yes, and I have a picture way back here towards the beginning. There's the back of my Subaru with 5/8 wave, 2 meter 440, and then the ATAS 120 Yaesu antenna. It's pretty cool. It tunes right through the coax. You don't need a separate screwdriver wire. But that works pretty good. It doesn't tune 40 really well. It says it will tune through 40, but I haven't done real well on 40 with it. But 20 and up, it works pretty great.
So as far as comparison between the two antennas, is it like a night and day difference to use the jack kite, or is it?
Oh yeah, no, the screwdriver antenna gets out, it's quick, it's mounted on my car. For like Summits on the Air, you can't have anything connected to your vehicle. It has to be entirely independent. Parks on the Air doesn't have that rule, so I just sort of ran with that and put the full station in my car. So all I do is pull in the parking lot, throw the windows down, turn on the rig, and I'm on the air. But I mean, the wire in the air and up much higher, hands down, works way better. I think this is a Delta loop with a 4-to-1 on it. Is this antenna, so it ran up and down off into the bushes and across the bottom. It was a 40-meter Delta loop. But yeah, I ran the coax up, fed it at the top. Maybe, I don't know. That might be a 9-to-1 random wire. I've used a couple different antennas on it this summer, so. But the pole way up in the air and lots more wire up there, hands down, works better. But for quick activations, the screwdriver works good.
You download your certificates, do you?
Sometimes, because they change. If you work like 100 entities and you get that certificate, you can save it or print it off. Because if you work 200, they just replace it. You can't go back and access the old 100 one. So if you really want to keep them all, I don't put.
Go back and get the old one, you just get the latest.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't print them or put them on my wall or anything, but they're kind of fun. I wanted, the only one I really like chased was that Rover one. I wanted to see if I could do 5 parks in one day. And the car made that easy, but yeah.
I haven't figured out how my talking to you when you're activating a park ends up on any kind of a database.
Because the guy in the park, if I'm in the park and you call me in the park, I have to keep the log. So you're going in my log at the park and I'm submitting that log. And that's why they want you to submit your log. Even if you don't make 10 contacts and you're frustrated you didn't activate the park, they want you to submit that log because then you, Sue, who contacted me in the park, get your points for that. So it's only one-sided logs, you don't have to do both, which works for me when I'm driving around because I'm not going to play radio, drive, and keep a log. That seems like a terrible idea.
Kind of a good thing to have that or not?
What's that?
API.
There's an interesting crossover in APRS. You can actually spot yourself in a park through APRS. You can send a little message and some guy has it set up so that it processes that into the spotting page. I don't think by APRSing like from a park, it automatically puts you in there. You would have to say, send the message saying I'm in this park entity, sideband, etc. So maybe, I've gone out a few times and called out on the repeater to let people know I'm going to be in Harvey Gap, which is I think how we made a contact. But there's other ways to spot yourself. You can obviously do it if you have cell service, APRS. I think there's a way to do it with a text message. If you have one of those Garmin devices, you can send a text message to spot yourself. But like, I figure at that point I'll just call CQ and someone will spot me eventually. Do it the old-fashioned way. So that's my Parks on the Air presentation. Anybody else have other questions? Ooh. Oh yeah, we could do the show of hands. Who's activated a park? Okay, who's ever made contact with someone in a park?
Never.
Came back to someone who was calling CQ Parks on the Air. Have you ever made contact with someone who's out in a park somewhere? Yeah, it's quite a few. You'd be surprised when you sign up what points you have. I don't know, or don't sign up, that's up to you. It's a fun program, it's been fun for me. I know I've probably talked about it too much at breakfast and whatnot, but I have enjoyed it. It's got me out to see some new parks, had some good conversations about people still doing ham radio even in this day and age of iPhones. So.
And you're still married.
I'm still married and yeah, my kids are all healthy and happy.
Well, Randy, you inspired the others that had the parks on the air. I've just had so much fun. And then if you go to the POTA website, on the rules pages, the number one rule is to have fun.
Yep.
And I like that attitude. It's a great activity.
It is fun, and I've not had any other opportunity in ham radio to work a 12-plus station pileup, and to sit out there and try and sort through those people and pick out, a letter or two of calls. There's not that many opportunities here to do that, so that part's really fun. But it's fun to be out and play some portable radio and have at least a little bit of points payoff on the back end for doing it. So.
Now, what Ken didn't tell you was I had to kick him in the rear to get him started. Because he was so anxious about getting on being an activator.
I know, I kicked him a few times too. I told him you'll have fun when you get out there.
He was off to the races once he got started.
CW CW was a pretty good challenge.
I have not crossed that Rubicon. I haven't done a CW activation, so I'm impressed.
Yeah, I did it all. Yeah, I did it all. And then at Ridgeway, I did CW again, but I just had continuous pileups, and I couldn't even pull out a letter. So you know, that was really hard. But I got quite a few, you know, eventually, and then I switched over to FT8, and then I had nothing but pileups on that. And so then I switched later on to sideband, and I had nothing but pileups there the whole day. So I had 51 contacts, but it was it's amazing to be the target of a pileup.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially when you're out in the woods and trying to listen to the little speaker on the picnic table.
You're trying to figure out a letter and put a question mark, you know, and that helps, but sometimes you can't even do that. So Steve Carter, some of you may remember Steve Carter. I visited with him yesterday. He does a lot of parts on the air, and he does nothing but CW. And his technique was to just pull a letter randomly. And you question mark, and he said, "That'll bring back somebody."
Narrows it down.
Narrows it down. You know, just like food tastes better when you're outside. So does radio works better. It's just more fun. You know, it's quieter usually, you know, and it's fun to play with the antennas and all that stuff.
It is quiet being out there.
I've got a club I joined in Florida, and they meet once a month in a park. But it's a city park, so by the count it doesn't count. But it's a very nice park. And these old guys in there are always saying parks on the air is revitalized and radio as a result of this program.
Yeah. Have they looked at parks on the air entities around to go do their play in the park?
Yeah, some of them are doing that, but this is just a city group, and they go to the city park on the last Saturday of the month every month.
So city parks don't count?
No. It's only state parks, national parks, certain wildlife or conservation areas, national monuments. It's like pretty significant recognized entities. And they've been very resistant to add new ones. So there's a few like we have Garfield State Wildlife Area, sort of east of Phil's house, south of Newcastle. I think it's Divide Creek. And that's been a state wildlife area for a long time. It's never been recognized by Parks on the Air. And I think they've been trying to apply the manpower to improving the website and making sure everything runs well, rather than trying to verify and add new entities. So that's why I put the Sweetwater, because that's going to be a new state park, which is pretty high level. So I'm curious if they will add that one or if it becomes a state park.
The numbering of all these, Graham, who did the numbering?
The POTA organization did it, and I sorted out like most of the like national forests have relatively low numbers. So they obviously had a priority they went through to do it in. National forests and national parks have low numbers, and then they get up pretty high for like state wildlife areas or state conservation areas.
But POTA is the one who allocated all the numbers.
Yes, and like Worldwide Flora and Fauna has completely different numbering systems. Yeah. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, I'll let you guys read that while I get a cup of coffee. Well, we've gotten a lot done. First 6 are done, the last 2 are not, as of today. So let's, no, I don't need any of that. This is kind of what we've been working on through the years. This is some of the hardware that's been in staging at my house. Some little pictures off to the right of all the little parts and pieces that it takes to make this system work. Virtually all of it is scattered around to the hilltops except for Anvil Points and Snowmass. This was the design, and it's basically a hub at Sunlight Peak where we have the 146.88 repeater and the 447.6 repeater. And then we have satellite receivers, voting receivers at 3 other locations, Anvil, Iron, and Snowmass. There's also a voting receiver at Sunlight, so there's 4 voting receivers. Right now we have 2 of the sites up and running, Sunlight and Iron Mountain, and it is voting just fine. I have a slide here in a minute, I'll show you that. Iron Mountain we finished a couple of years ago. Seems to be working okay for us. It's a little bit of a polluted RF site, so the sensitivity is not as good as I'd like to see it, but the price is good, and it's easy to get to year-round. I think we'll stay there. We also have our Allstar node up there because we have fiber internet to that building. So that's been working extremely well. Sunlight, we're done, or basically done. We got the microwave all done last year. And then about a week ago Wednesday, I was up there for a day and cut over both repeaters to the new system. There were a few wrinkles. We didn't realize that Allstar and Echolink didn't work until the Sunday night net. We resolved it the next day, but those sort of things just pop up, and until you put them on the air, you don't know. The picture on the right illustrates the amount of test equipment and stuff I have to go through to get the audio levels set perfectly on these things. I do not do this by ear, I do it by test equipment. That way every site is the same. We're going through this pretty quick. This is a screenshot of something called Almon, and it's kind of a less fancy version of Supermon that we've seen on the other nodes. This system is actually Allstar. It actually uses special nodes for the repeaters. And I captured this yesterday when Bob was talking to that new guy going up towards Carbondale. This was Bob's signal from his house. He voted to the Iron Mountain receiver. You know, he was full scale into that one to where he was significantly worse on Sunlight. This is all transparent to the users. Nobody knows which site you're on. It can switch as you're mobile. I heard this on Jerry and Trish one day. As you guys were driving around the Walmart area, you're switching back and forth between those two sites because all those audios are set the same. Nobody can hear it. Everybody stays on 146.88, same PL. The simplicity is the reason we went this way. And we're getting near the end. This is going to go quick. This is what's left to do. These are the cabinets that will go to Anvil Points and Snowmass. They're going to be wall-hung cabinets. They're all pre-wired. They're all ready to go. At a moment's notice, I can put them in the back of my pickup, and away we go. Problem is the weather forecast this morning. We're going into some wet weather. So it's not happening next week. We always get Indian summer around this part of the world, and I'm sure that we will again. But we're just on standby until the weather clears. Some closing comments here. The complexity of this exceeded my expectations. This took a lot more time and years than I ever anticipated. The audio fidelity is not to my expectations. It's kind of a tinny audio. It lost a lot of the bass, and I don't know why. I need to listen to the Colorado connection to see how theirs sound. They're using the same system that we're using, so I need to see if there's something that we can adjust or work on. Anvil Points is isolated. 147.15 is talking to itself. It is no longer linked into the system, and it will not be. Veil links to Anvil Points. It's still linked, but it's only going to talk to Anvil Points. It's not going to be heard on 8.8. We don't know what the solution to that will be. Anvil will eventually just go away. It's going to be replaced. That's antiquated stuff up there, and it goes out the door.
The site you'll still use though?
Yeah, we'll still use our wonderful little wood building up there.
And well, the solar's without.
And the solar, yeah. Yeah, we got 800 ampere hours of battery up there. I mean, we're good. And we're not going to be transmitting from there anymore. So, I mean, we got like 4 times the amount of batteries than we'd need. Snowmass is still linked. So see in, in parentheses or whatever those are, that it's poorly. It's intermittent. The link radio to that site has been flaky for years. Plus the controller is not programmed properly. I mean, there's a bunch of junk in our system that nobody will support. And that's why we're modernizing. We do have some more work to do at Sunlight if we have volunteers and we have time. But it'll keep till next year. No big deal. This would not have happened without Pete. Pete and I spent a lot of time doing screen shares, working through these Linux issues. We had to do a complete rebuild of the server and a complete reconfiguration of the darn thing. The amount of hours that have gone into this has just not been good, but it's mostly behind us. And the last slide. Question?
So down the road, 8.8 will be the only thing going to the west. We won't have a more westerly.
Nope,
source.
not planning. Yeah, it'll only be transmit 8.8 from Sunlight. We're not transmitting from Anvil anymore.
Quite interesting, the radio program that I did in Florida, they handed over the whole of their network to the emergency services during the hurricane. And the emergency services, well, they actually ran control, ham radios running it, but from the emergency services center. They've got a lot of association with the police, fire and ambulance service. And I guess they get quite a bit of funding as well from the emergency service because they are providing this backup to the normal thing. And I just wondered sometimes whether we should be talking to, the emergency services about the network we provide. From the point of view of, getting some support, when you think about it, when the whole thing goes wrong, our system might still be standing up.
Funding is not a real issue to us. The microwave system, we got a grant for all of that. We can go after additional grants, and Bob and I have had this conversation, is that we don't have the people to do the work. No use going after more hardware. I mean, there's only so much of this stuff we need sitting around. Eric?
Are we gonna surrender the Anvil Point site and everything else, or not site, but the frequencies?
147.15 will surrender.
Okay.
146.67 for Snowmass is going to move to my house. It's going to be on the air there because I don't want to surrender that frequency. That is a valuable old school frequency.
That was kind of my question, was like with the 70 centimeter stuff, is there an opportunity to do something with like DMR or D-Star?
Sure there would.
Okay, I mean,
Yeah.
If we surrender them, I know they're gone.
6.7 is the only frequency I intend to keep.
Okay.
And I will put it on the air this fall. I mean, it's not going to have a hell of a lot of coverage for my house. It'll actually be linked into this system. But I intend to hold that frequency. That's what sunlight used to be, was 6.7. Originally, I think. Either 6.7 or 7.0. I can't remember which.
It was 6.7.
6.7.
We had interference problems.
Yeah, we moved 6.7 to Snowmass, and
When they started loading up sunlight with a gazillion different frequencies from other users, it just didn't play.
6.7 seems to be kind of, I noticed that we had 6.7 out in LA too, years ago when we were living out there, and 6.7 seems to have a noise problem. Other services seem to get into it worse than some other frequencies. That's what I've observed.
I think the other thing for people who don't know is that all this control will be at Kevin's command. You don't have to go to a site for the system.
I've even got some little gadgets that arrived. This is called a port server, and basically Ethernet to serial. And we're going to attach one of these to each of those MTR 2000 repeaters. You know, those are kind of old. They're 1990s vintage. You plug in an RS-232 to them to administer them. Well, I bought one of these just to see if you could talk to that repeater across the network. No problem, piece of cake. So I bought one for every repeater. That will give me the ability to get into the software of each repeater remotely. And of course, I can access these anytime through PuTTY. These are a network device. There's 3 ways to get into those. This does not have an interface. This is strictly GPS to this device and that device. And this is the Nook server that is at my house.
Are we giving up the 6.7 location just because it's
No,
our
we're keeping
service?
the location. It's just going to become a 2.8 receiver. Easier.
I see, okay.
Are you looking at getting those Ethernet power switches that you can power cycle stuff?
We could, but
That was really handy in my former career.
yeah. Thing is, these are both AC and DC, so you got to switch both. But if I have Ethernet connectivity to it, even with a command line interface, I can do a reboot. You know, unless it just totally dies.
So like if your router locks up, some of them you can configure the port, say, okay, reboot the port, and it'll power it off and then power it back on
Yeah.
in 5 seconds or whatever.
It's a thought.
They're handy.
The routers are DC powered. They're also pretty intelligent as to how you can access them. You can do it by IP address. You can do it by MAC address. I mean, they're pretty robust to be able to get your way into that router one way or another. Same with the microwave radios. They've been solid since we put them in last year. Not a one of them has dropped off.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
It's good stuff for the money. I mean, it's great. These have not given us trouble. By the way, Bob, we did resurrect both of them. I did factory resets on both of them and got them back to where they were, and away we went. These are the little nodes that connect to the repeater. They're an Allstar node. but they're slimmed down a lot for specific purpose. Any other questions?
Is that to send the signal digitally?
Yep, yeah, it goes analog to digital, then Ethernet to the router and back to the server.
And that's where you think the audio quality is degrading?
I do. You know, I don't know what VoIP they're using. You know, these Motorola repeaters are well known for good audio. And somehow the audio is degraded between there, and then it comes back and gets transmitted. So it does a round trip. And the audio is just not to my satisfaction. It's good, intelligible. It lost the bass. I don't know why. There are some pre-emphasis, de-emphasis things in both this and that I might try fussing with those a little bit. Just don't know. When we first powered it up Wednesday, many of you probably discovered, like I did, when you unkeyed your mic, you heard about a second and a half of your own conversation. And that was because the buffers were set wrong in this and this. And there's a calculation you have to go through to set those where they're supposed to be, but I can't do it finalized until I get the two far ends put in. But got that a lot less. You still unkey and you hear just a little bit of your conversation, but keep in mind you're going in on a repeater through that thing to there. It's getting processed, sent back to the site. So there's 20 milliseconds of latency. That isn't that much, but these things are storing it for a while too. So we'll sort that out.
I think in general, that's one of the things that people are going to have to pause a little. Okay, because I mean, when we talk to stars, we'll hit the button, you cut the other guy off sometimes for his last words, it's going to be, and that leads to a lot of problems. Guys are talking about Allstar, for instance. Both guys are at Allstar. You can never break it. It's just really difficult. We gotta wait for that far.
Now what Pete and I are going to try to do this winter is figure out a way to tie our Allstar system in directly here. Right now, Allstar comes in to a radio that's at my house, and it goes 440 up to Sunlight. Comes in on that repeater up there. We're going to see if we can cross patch that between the two networks that way, safely. The other thing right now, none of you will be able to see, where is it? None of you will be able to see this system, this screen here. It's on a private network. Ultimately, we want to have that available publicly. But right now it's on a 10.14 network. So it's not there for access to others.
That could be helpful for if someone's interfering with the network,
It would. And if say we got interference at Iron Mountain, I can get into the system, kill that receiver.
You can also monitor it if you have an Allstar system set up to the house. You can just dial into Supermon and you see everybody who's logged in. Usually there's 10 people being logged in.
Yeah.
And then who's ever talking goes to the top of the list. So if they're on Allstar, you'll see their call go to the top of the list. If someone is causing interference, there is a way to access it, like you said, to get rid of that signal sequence, which is really important.
Unfortunately, a lot of the nodes have the auto reconnect feature in them. So you dump them, and a minute later they're right back. This will be a little different than that, but still will give us management. And as Anvil and Snowmass come online, this screen will just get bigger. It'll add more receivers. This spare repeater you see here, that's the one I'm going to put on 6.7.
say if we have a bad spot down in downtown Aspen or something that.
Sure.
Sheldon wants
If
to
we,
have that.
if we can get connectivity into the system,
Okay.
that's going to be the key.
It'd be like a VPN type of deal or something.
They do VPNs with these systems. I know Colorado Connection, they have a repeater down in Durango, which they don't have microwave all the way down there. They're VPN through the internet. Pete and I will ponder that through the winter. But connecting this private network to the public network very carefully.
Yep.
So where would Vail fit in? Would that be another voter?
Well, I'm still of a mind that we find a place in the Avon, Edwards area and do a conventional Allstar node connection, public node connection. That's the easy way. Ultimately, work with Rocky Mountain Ham guys and tie through their microwave system to Sunlight. We have fiber connection from our router to their router on Sunlight. So the path is there. Just got to add another chunk of microwave from Vail Mountain to Upper Dow Junction.
All those frequencies, anybody who runs an All-Star node, I run an All-Star node, runs 24/7. We go to 448.1, PL on both sides, receiver transmit, that's 100. You work through the CAN, you have to flip over manually, though, if you're using 8.8, it makes the 8.8 loading system, kind of useless for you.
8.8 will do it for you now. So.
Yeah.
Richard did say something at breakfast this week that your node may be getting hot and chattering. Your radio.
I would believe that.
Yeah, I think it was me and Fred having a long chat. And yours was flying out of the lines, and it started to go boom, 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 then made a really crackling noise and gave up.
Oh, yeah, that happens. That's another reason to get rid of an All-Star node, so it's clicking off.
Yeah. But as Kevin said, I don't need to use that anymore.
I can use less power.
Are we done?
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, I wanted to just pass on some information after my stroke I had in May. I was talking to my doctor and going through all kinds of stuff and hobbies and things I do, and I said, I'm a ham radio operator. And she said, well, did you ever learn the Morse code? And I said, well, yeah, back in 1960 when I got started. And so he came up with, he said, that's probably one of the best things I could do in reality and getting the connections in the mind together again. So, and I've always been a fanatic anyway, so it was easy to get started. And the other day I was listening, all of a sudden I heard the MST on 20 meters, and so I, in my infinite wisdom, I just Googled MST contest and came back with this site called International CW Council. And so I think I ended up typing in International CW Council in Google and popped up with this page, and it came back in one of the, came back with a really neat site, benefits of using Morse code, and they're really devoted to Morse code, and they have a bunch of contests that go along with it. And one of the things were the clubs that are associated with the International Council, and there must be 50 or more of these things. I was going to print off copies for everybody, and then I thought, you know, that'd be like 2,000 pages. So I just did one. If anybody cares to look through some of the clubs, some of my favorites that I'm a member of are FIS and SKCC, Straight Key Century Club, And the NAQCC is my all-time favorite. That's a North American QRP CW club. And that one, they have all kinds of activities and contests once a month. And but the MST is 20 to 25 words a minute, and it runs on Monday and Tuesday every week. I didn't realize it. And God, I've been on that band all kinds of times. And then another one I came up with, I was just listening Friday, and all of a sudden I heard CQ SST. And the SST is a slow speed, and so relatively slow. But anytime it gets, I'm okay 20 to 25 words a minute, I can copy all day, but it gets over to 25, and it's like a blur. So I'm not even trying to get there. I'd have to get a reader or something. The speed these guys do, and they must have readers because it's so fast. So, but anyway, those are available, and the MSD was pretty cool. It runs. They try to keep it at 20 to 25, and it's a kind of give and exchange. So even if you're slower operator in CW, you listen to that a while and you kind of get, oh, okay, I can do that. So the exchanges are easy to make. And of course, the SST, that's K1 USN, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's less than 20 words per minute. So I'll leave this stuff sitting here, but I would suggest just do ICWC Google, and it'll give you this page, and then that'll give you the contact with all these other CW clubs, organizations. And I've got a FIS number and an SKCC number and an NAQCC number and a couple others too, but they're fun. And it's a quick contest for an hour, and it just kind of helps you get going if you're interested in CW at all. So I'd recommend it. I'll leave them playing here.
Cool.
Bob, I've been participating in the slow scan, slow speed CW.
The SSP?
And it's still 15 or 20.
Yeah,
so that's not what I'd call slow. But I needed some inspiration or some encouragement because my CW skills always get rusty, and then I get into it for a while, and then I move on to other things, and then I have to just keep redoing it all the time. But I needed something to kind of get me, like Dave is kind of kicking the rear, to do something. And the slow speed contest, there's the only thing you exchange, you give your call letter, you give a 599 or whatever, and CO.
Yeah.
You're done. Don't give anything else. And it's so simple, and maybe it's too simple, but I could do that, and I could copy those things, and I knew they were coming the same way on the other side, so it didn't take long to be able to pick that up, and I got better at it. I could pick up things, I could understand more, and it was just enough of a crutch to get me from zero to I'm now operating. And then I was ready to do Parks on the Air, and I started doing that, and that helped build up my speed. So they do a contest on Friday, Friday afternoon, and Sunday at 6, and it's an hour long. Maybe you already said that. I don't know.
That's the one I heard yesterday.
And it's so easy. So anyway.
So
Yeah.
are we gonna see you on in the CW tent next field day?
If we can go 15 to 20, yes.
Well, I can tell you for sure
that stuff that just sounds like FTA.
You may not. You may be hoping for 15 or 20, but with the equipment that we have and the accessories, you can do anything as long as you have a good signal coming the other way.
I'll tell you what, I've done readers, you play around with them, and if you have it on long enough, you finally pick up a call. They're doing the real thing, having it go through your head.
Yeah.
When you're talking about helping your brain, it is, even if you have to go slower, big deal, you go slower. And that is so rewarding. And it's too bad that CW contests are mostly by people running decoders and F2 and F4, And that, and to me, that's not CW, that's just using a computer to push buttons.
Well, I'd
Well, the thing I
recommend,
can tell you is after a weekend of doing that, have really improved your CW speed. And I mean just your natural abilities. And it brought me back to just about where I was when I peaked, let's say.
well, if you get into a contest like that, you have the exchange, it's always the same, pretty much. And then you pick up a letter or two with each call you talk to. So pretty soon it's easy, it kind of clicks.
You don't have to send their call, that's the nice thing about it, now poking loose on the air, you have to listen.
You have to
for
log
that
their call.
And you gotta call
Yeah.
them. But in this slow speed contest, you just give your own call. And, sure, if you want to log theirs, you can keep listening until you finally pick up all the letters of their calls, and that's what I have to do sometimes. And then I can log it, but that's why I can get on there and not have any stress at all, and I love it.
Well, I'd recommend the NAQCC club. And I'd also recommend people knock their power down to 5 watts, start doing QRP. And that will slow it down a lot, because a lot of the QRP is with key, not a bug even. So those two things, NAQCC and QRP, and you'll have a ball. I've been moving to QRP a lot lately, and I've got a great little rig that I use for it.
You submit your results?
I have, yeah, this one you can, and you can acquire certificates, and it's pretty cool. Really neat deal. That's all I got. Oh, I wanted to, too, maybe the club could think about it. I would kind of like to see a kind of a tribute contest for KI0G. If Bob was a QRP fanatic, and it'd be really cool if we as a club could sponsor a QRP contest of some kind, maybe through counties in western Colorado, or something that we could come up with. It'd be fun to do as a tribute to Bob.
That's what this is.
Maybe kick it around, we could talk about it.
I have one more comment. You've probably all seen this book, okay? So this is going to be our guest speaker in November 11th.
Oh, cool.
So he's volunteered to come. We've offered him a stipend, pay for his overnight here and stuff. He's refused that, as I understand it. And so he's going to come and speak to us. So if you know anybody who wants to get into ham radio, okay, I think it'd be a very appropriate meeting to invite somebody.
That book was very inspirational to me. I bought a copy of that, and it just made me want to get outside and start operating.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a great book. And it talks parts on the air, I think, too. Yeah. So, anyway, don't miss that, November 11th.
No, I just want to make sure.
Any further comment? Okay, I think, if I judge what's going on, there's some sort of a deal here at the end, Kevin, associated with this equipment here.
Bob.
Yeah, we're just gonna hand out tickets. There's some really nice things there, a lot of things. I have no idea what they are. They're free, so what we thought we'd do to just, rather than give away books at the end of the meeting, we just give everybody a ticket, and who's ever first gets the first pick of one or two things, and until it's all gone. And
The
it's got
goal
it.
is to get it all gone.
Yeah, Linda wants everything free, and I want it all gone because I'm not gonna save it.
Not putting that in your attic, are you?
Basement. Crawl space.
Anybody have a pen?
Great. Oh, I'm getting out of here.
We'll fill in your